This is Montessa Young, Extension Educator with Washington County Extension. This presentation is going to be on hoop houses, high tunnels, and greenhouses. So what's the difference between a hoop house, a high tunnel, and a greenhouse? Well, hoop house and high tunnels are actually the same thing. Occasionally you will see hoop house referred to more of your backyard garden or smaller structures, where high tunnels can be bigger structures, but that doesn't always hold true. So a hoop house and a high tunnel is a plastic covered structure, usually a single or double layer of plastic. They have no heating or cooling system. Usually they will have roll-up sides or windows or some sort of ventilation system, but not a heating or cooling system. And you actually grow in the ground, so plants and crops are being grown in the ground in a hoop house and a high tunnel. Compare this to a greenhouse. Greenhouses usually have durable glazing, so an outside surface that's going to last for several years, either made out of plastic or glass or polycarbonate. They generally have a heating and a cooling system to allow them to grow year-round. So usually you'll have a propane or natural gas heating system, and then an evaporative cooling system. Generally in a greenhouse, you're growing in pots or containers or utilizing hydroponics. You generally are not growing in the ground in a greenhouse. So why would you build a hoop house and a high tunnel instead of a greenhouse? For one thing, they are more affordable. Their materials, just the plastic and the framing, is more affordable than a traditional greenhouse. Has many advantages for windy and low humidity climates. You don't get as much evaporation inside the high tunnel or the stress of the wind, allowing you to grow plants in a healthier environment. And of course, for season extension, you might not be able to grow year-round like you can in a greenhouse, but it'll definitely extend your season in a hoop house or high tunnel. So this is my personal hoop house and how I first became interested in hoop houses. We had a piece of property that was a weed pile, and we smoothed that all out and decided to put a hoop house on it. So this is actually built from the top rail of aluminum chain link fencing. So it took 3 top rails, and I purchased a bender, so I was able to bend those myself, and then put up the frames and attach the plastic, and off and growing. So on the right hand side you can see the completed hoop house. I have several windows in the end to allow for ventilation, and I actually have roll-up sides on both sides, so you can roll those up in the summer to allow to be able to grow year-round. In the middle there you can see some trellising that's actually made with electric conduit tubing and what's called Hort Anova netting. And that's what I used to grow my tomatoes on the first year. So you can see those little tomato starts sitting on the ground and getting ready to be planted. And this was 4 years ago, so I've grown every year since then in my hoop house. So on the left hand side is looking back the other direction. You can see I have a wide door and a barn style door, which gives me more ventilation options, and 2 additional windows. And then on the right hand side is the cautionary tale that tomatoes really do grow well in the hoop house. So that is late season last year when I got a little busy at work, and the tomatoes won. I didn't keep up with my pruning. As you can see, they are filling this whole hoop house, and it's about 12.5 feet tall, and it is 20 foot wide. So the tomatoes did very well for themselves, and was kind of a challenge to clean up this last fall. So this is my dream hoop houses. These are on Elliot Coleman's farm, who's known for his growing in hoop houses. So you can see his raised beds and perfect rows and not a weed in sight. So this is my aspiration, is to be able to grow like this and not as my tomatoes looked in the last slide. So this is a great invention. I am not sure how well tested it's been in high wind areas. But this is the sliding hoop house. So you start one crop in one portion of your field, and then when you're done with the hoop house portion for that crop, so let's say you started an early lettuce crop and it was ready to be harvested, and you wanted to start a tomato crop or cover up a tomato crop for fall. That whole hoop house actually rolls on those side beams, and so it's a movable hoop house, which I think is a great invention. Let's talk a little bit about the temperature management inside a hoop house. This is actually a graph from the Winter Harvest Handbook by Elliott Coleman. Now on the left-hand side, you can see the temperatures ranging from -10 degrees up to 70 degrees, and then the dates along the bottom of this particular year. So as you can see, the hoop house is not keeping the temperature from going up and down. We are still approaching almost zero outside. We get down to -2.6 in the outside of the greenhouse. And then the red line is inside the greenhouse under the ag fabric. So the minimum temperature that we see there is 23.5 degrees. You can see as it gets into later February, there's probably a nice, bright, sunshiny day that it accidentally went up to 91.5 degrees inside the greenhouse. So that's where those windows and the ventilation and being able to remove that ag fabric may be useful when you're getting that warm. So the hobby greenhouse. So if you don't want a hoop house and you decided you do want a greenhouse, there's some considerations. For year-round production, you're going to need an energy efficient structure. So you are trying to hold as much heat in this house to make it through the winter as possible. So that usually means effective glazing, very good heating system. You'll want a well-designed solar collector to save you on the heating system. So this is a set of bricks or a set of water containment that's going to hold temperature when you do have sunny days. And then optimum management. You're going to have to control the highs and the low on temperature. It's going to take quite a bit of oversight and babysitting. What I see most home gardeners use the hobby greenhouse for is for seed starting in the spring. They'll usually run a heater out there. It provides, they can be out there in early March with just a small propane heater to keep it warm on those super cold nights. And then sometimes they'll bring in plants that maybe aren't hardy for their zone in for some winter protection. Not to necessarily grow them through the winter, but just to protect them from the super low temperatures.